Hi everyone, welcome to Music Production, a free course, and this video is about dry recording and recording itself. What's a dry recording? That's a recording where there is the room itself, the reflections of your sound in the room are not recorded. That's a dry recording. So this girl sings into the room. The sound will reflect on the walls, on the floor, on every object in the room. It will turn back to her. But that's not a problem because this microphone is only recording at this side, not at this side. So the sound comes back, it's wet. So the dry sound leaves, it bounces back. Everything that bounces back is called wet sound. So your dry sound changes into a wet sound the moment it starts bouncing back, reflecting on objects and comes back. And what makes a recording wet? That wet sound that bounces back will pass you and reflect behind you on the wall and then go into the microphone. Also the sides, a microphone records the front of the microphone, but also the sides of the microphone are recording. So some of the sound that comes from the side, wet sound that comes from the side, might also slip into the microphone, and that makes the recording wet. So what's a dry recording? That's a situation where you avoided the wet sound to return into the microphone, bounce back into the microphone. Why do we need a dry recording instead of a wet recording? That's not the right one. Let me show you that over here. So this is my song.
I am what I am. You are what you are.
All these instruments were recorded dry. That doesn't mean there was no room mic mixed into it. So when you record drums, mostly you have microphones, like a microphone pointed at the kick or a microphone pointing at the snare and so on. And then there might be room mics too hanging above the drums that are recording the room, and they might be mixed into it to give to give the sound some body. But it's not meant to make the sound wet. What's wet? Why do we want a dry recording? That was the question. Well, we compress the dry sound in a different way than the wet sound, and this works well in a mix that has to be played back on two stereo speakers. So have a look. The attack time is 35 seconds here of this dry compressor. And when I go to the wet compressor of the drums, it's just an example. The attack time is 44 milliseconds. So we don't compress the dry sound the same way we compress the wet sound. We give the wet sound more freedom, so to say, when it comes to the attack. And when it comes to the release, we make the release a bit slower. So that's why it's not a natural situation. When we mix a song, it's meant to be played through two speakers, one at the left, one at the right. We call this two stereo speakers. And so it's not as you can't compare it to a real life situation, because when your music is recorded and played back, that's not a real life situation. So we found out that it's better to have a dry recording and then add a room yourself in your DAW. So with delays and reverb, I've added a room. And so that's another reason when you record with the reverb on top of it, imagine you do that. You don't do this booth. Let's see if it's still open. No, it's not open. So you don't do the booth. You just stand close to the wall, the sound comes back in. What happens then if you try to mix it? First of all, your sound is wet, your vocal is wet. What does that mean? Your vocal will sound very far away in the mix. Reverb has the tendency to push the vocal back in the mix. That's why you have to record it dry, and then we create a room with delays and we add a bit of reverb to the delays. Why? I explained this in one of the previous videos. Reverb is like a fog, it's like a cloud. So we prefer not to use so much reverb. We prefer to use delays with a little reverb attached to it. And it's impossible to do this if you already recorded the room. So I need your recording without a room, so I can compress the dry sound and the wet sound in a different way. And that wet sound is a self-created wet sound. It has not much to do with a real room anymore because I use delays instead of reverb. And it's the same for all the other instruments. I already told you that the bass is a total dry bass in this recording. So 100% dry bass, there are no delays and there is no reverb. So that's a very unnatural situation. So I need that dry recording because a bass is a low instrument and it sounds muddy when you add delays or reverb to it. So recording dry is important. It's important for all the instruments. Try to make the recording as dry as possible. Might not sound nice. When you listen to the vocal, just a dry vocal, it sounds horrible, I wanted to say. It's not totally horrible, but it sounds very unnatural and it's not very attractive. Okay, so you know now that you have to record it dry. And look, you can create something at home very easily. What is this? This is a yoga mat. And this is a certain acoustic panel. It looks like this. And what does this acoustic panel do exactly? It's like a Japanese hand fan. You see this Japanese hand fan, you can totally stretch it and open it, but you can also close it. And this panel is like a semi-closed hand fan. The sound thinks it's very large. The sound reacts to it as if it's totally open, but in fact, it's not. So what does that mean? When the sound bounces on this panel, it thinks this is like a wall, but a much larger wall, a stretched out. So when the wall has an uneven surface, the sound thinks it's a larger wall. It reacts as if it's a wall with an even surface. So this panel is not really preventing sounds from outside to come into the microphone. It's not, it's just taking away some of, it's dispersing a little bit the reflection, the wet sound, it's dispersing it. So you have that yoga mat, and then there is one on top of it, one of those panels on top of it at the sides. But behind this yoga mat, you can't see it. There are 3 of these panels, 15 centimeters of these panels, like 15 centimeters, I mean one, and then another one on top, another one on top, and then you place those 3 together behind it, and another, you might have to build it behind it. Here too, there is 15 centimeters behind what you see. This is a kind of booth with just sofa cushions. So there is a sofa with hard cushions, and I just put one up, another up, one on top, made a little roof. I have these acoustic panels, and behind it, there is 15 centimeters of those panels. You could wonder why. Why 15 centimeters? Traffic noise, very low rumble, keeps reflecting on the wall if you don't have 15 centimeters of acoustic materials behind you. So we're all talking, when we talk about a dry recording, it's all about the sound that's behind you or at the sides of you that might reflect back into the microphone. So at this right moment, I'm recording this course and I'm sitting in exactly this booth. So the girl's not there. It's me. I'm sitting into it and the microphone is positioned as much into this booth as possible. So I sit with my back all the way against this wall made out of acoustic panels. I push my back into this little self-created booth and then I place this microphone as much into this booth as possible. And then the recording is dry. So the sounds from outside that are still penetrating the walls and the windows, it's nearly impossible. You have cars everywhere and trucks and horns and birds and whatever. You can't keep it all out and you don't have to. All right, so that's what a dry recording is, why you should record dry, and also how to do it. You make sure the dry sound that bounces back becomes wet sound and cannot penetrate the microphone again by bouncing back behind you or from the sides. Let's now talk about recording itself for a moment. How do I record, for example, this course? I have this microphone. It's a Shure 7B microphone. This microphone is connected with a cable to this external sound card, audio card. This audio card changes the analog sound into a digital sound and makes it go into this MacBook Air computer. When I'm talking to you, I also have these monitor headphones on, so I can hear myself talking and I know what it's going to sound like. So I can hear the music from my screen. If I play the song, I can hear the music of my screen in the mic here in the headphones, and I can hear myself talking too in those headphones. Let's have a look online a bit. This is surely not advertisement. Why not? Because this is just the cheapest gear. So the Shure microphone 7B I have this one, is the cheapest microphone that I should open this one, that actually records up to 20,000 hertz. So if I open for a moment this microphone is recording all the way from, I think it's like 50 or 40. So that's as low as it records, and it records all the way up here until 20,000 hertz. If you have another microphone, like a stage microphone, a Shure 58, for example, it only records until here, until 15,000 hertz. So a part of what the human ear can hear is not recorded. We can hear all the way up to 20,000 hertz. And that microphone doesn't record the last 5,000 hertz. And the Shure 7B microphone is actually doing that. And it's the cheapest microphone I know that gives a full sound and actually records the whole spectrum. I thought why not, if I have a Shure microphone, buy a Shure audio interface too? This audio interface has only one input. Keep that in mind. Only the microphone can be connected to it. You cannot connect, connect the guitar to it while you play, because then you need an audio interface with two inputs. And this has only one input. And the sound here, you put a cable in it and it goes to your computer. The good thing is, for me, that it always works. What do I mean with that? I plug it in on my computer, and then when I go to sound, I can actually see it move here normally, the recorder. So when I record, I just use the normal sound features that the MacBook Air provides when you're just listening to any other music. So you just drag the volume all the way up and you're ready. You don't need any additional software. And I like that, because additional software means that if my MacBook gets an update, I need an update for this audio interface too. And I don't want that. So it works without software. You just plug it in. So I have that microphone plugged in into this, plugged in into my MacBook Air. About this MacBook, I bought it with all possible upgrades. So when you buy a MacBook or any other computer, many companies like Apple give you at the end, you keep clicking, I want to buy a MacBook, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, you can choose upgrades. For example, a higher clock speed, a bigger storage, a bigger internal hard drive, so you have more storage room. I did all that. I have the fastest possible MacBook Air I could buy at that specific moment. Is it good enough? Haha. This Logic Pro program, the song is mixed in Logic Pro, comes with a lot of plugins. And as long as you use the plugins provided by Logic Pro, the song keeps playing without telling you like, oh, I can't play this because I'm overloaded. But when you actually use external third-party plugins, like I have on the master bus Ozone 10, I bought it from Isotope to master the song. I can only use it here, and if I start using other plugins, because it's a lot, I will show you for a moment. So this is Ozone 10, but you can also add specific plugins that, for example, vintage tape plugin, vintage limiter, vintage blah, blah, blah. You can use all this or just the overall plugin that will combine these ones itself. I will talk about Ozone. I will talk about it a bit more later. But when I use this, it's a very heavy thing on the CPU. And so even with the upgraded version of the MacBook, third-party plugins might make Logic Pro crash while you start to play it. Okay. Let me have a look. So dry recording. Okay, so we talked about dry recording. Let's now talk for a moment about what recording does to your sound. You might not be aware of it, but if you have a band, a pop band, and you sing through a microphone and your voice is blasted through the speakers into the concert hall, you lose about 40% of the dynamic range of your vocal. So your vocal might have, let's say, a dynamic range of 50 decibels. With dynamic range, I mean when you're singing, you might have softer consonants and vowels, and you might have louder parts. So some syllables might be loud, some syllables might be softer, and that's the dynamic range. So when you sing and you sing like this, then I go soft, I go loud, I go soft, loud. That's the dynamic range. And an opera singer, for example, might have a dynamic range of 50 decibels. He goes up in volume, he goes down in volume, he goes up in volume, he goes down in volume. I'm not talking about the moment when he stops singing. Of course, then the meter will go all the way to 0. No, dynamic range is just the difference between the loudest and the softest parts when he is actively singing. So that's about 50 decibels. This vocal has, when you just look at the meter,
I am what I am. You are what you are.
So it goes up to -7, and I have to lower this to have a good look.
The earth is still spinning and rivers flow downstream, but not much is
That's
left
about it, I think.
of our childhood dreams.
I maybe even should put it here.
Our way out. There's no turning around. No
Okay,
freedom.
so the vocal moves between -6 and -15. So the dynamic range is 9 decibels. Of course, when this guy was singing it, it was not 9 decibels. It became 9 decibels because it was recorded by a microphone and it went through that audio interface. Where is it? This one went through this external audio interface and became digital. And all this process reduces the dynamic range of the singer in such a way that 40 to 50 decibels of difference is reduced to 10. That's a disaster because people feel emotion when there is a lot of dynamic range. I think that's why we feel emotion when we listen to a classical orchestra, a professional one, or an opera singer, because there is a lot of dynamic range. So it's gone. Once you record it, it's gone. Is that a problem? Not at all, because 10 or 9 decibels of dynamic range might even be, it's more than enough, because I'm going to mix this song to be played on an electronic device. You will listen to it on your phone, on an iPad, and you will hear it through speakers, and those speakers, they don't want more dynamic range. If there would be more dynamic range, that would be very annoying. Because when I sing softly, you would turn up the volume because you can't hear me. And when I sing louder, then you would have to turn the volume down. So although there is only 9 decibels left, I'm still compressing this vocal, first of all, to stabilize it, to make it sound stable. And because that's important for the mix. So when you mix a song, it's an artificial situation. You record it dry, you compress the dry sound in a different way than the wet sound, and this wet sound is a self-created wet sound with delays instead of reverb, primarily with delays instead of reverb. Although you lose a lot of that original dynamic range, it's still enough. But then you know that it's a very unnatural situation. And you can be disappointed. You can be disappointed that you went to see an opera and it emotionalized you and you were very impressed, and then you hear the recording of it and you're disappointed. That's very possible because they might have compressed it too hard. Classical music, you shouldn't compress it too hard. And if you don't compress it too hard, what happens then? It means that you can't listen to it in your car because the engine of your car will make too much noise. You will not hear the soft parts or when it goes loud. That's a very annoying thing. pop music is a compressed genre, but classical music is not, because you try to keep some of that dynamic range. So you might not be able to listen to it or enjoy it as much when you listen to it, for example, in a car because of the background noise. Let's see if everything is said. Oh yeah, let me add one more thing about that recording booth. Let's see if you have understood what I said about it. Imagine you're a saxophone player and you're not a singer. You have that saxophone, and the opening of the saxophone is pointing that way. The microphone will be pointed slightly downwards, diagonally downwards. So how are you going to create a dry recording? It's simple. You have to play that way. That's the first thing you do. The sound will bounce back and become weird and will return, which is not a problem because your microphone only records this way. The sound will bounce on the floor and then return. So you have to make sure that you put something on the floor, preferably 15 centimeters of this. That microphone will also be recording at the sides. So the best thing would be that you put such a yoga mat, but a lower one, around you, like you are in a little house with a floor, but there is no roof. And that's important. There should be no roof. One of the biggest mistakes when people record vocals or other instruments is that they start to reduce the room size. Very often you see that they sell even something that you can put behind the microphone. Don't buy it. Why on earth would you put something behind the microphone? Your vocal goes this way and it's stopped. If you sing in a small space, that small space will compress your sound. So if you sing in a bathroom, you might like it very much because the tile creates a lot of wet sound. And on top of that, that bathroom is a small space. So your sound will be it will work like a compressor. The wall will compress the sound because it creates a lot of density. Your vocal is like bouncing, 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 and it creates the same effect as as compression. So what's the best spot in your house, if you are working in your house, to record your vocal or your saxophone or your violin? It's the biggest room you have. And don't worry about the reflections. Even if that room has a lot of wet bounce back, a lot of reflections, not a problem. Once you build this booth, your vocal will be dry. So you sing into the biggest room possible, so the walls will not compress your sound. You don't sing in a small closet or whatsoever. Maybe if you sing in a closet, it doesn't have that compressing effect if you whisper into the microphone. But when you start singing, the sound will be compressed by the size of that closet. So don't sing in small spaces. Don't record in small spaces, and always sing or play to the open part of your booth. So never turn around. Never turn around. Never put the microphone here and sing towards this booth. Not at all, because your sound will be compressed by the size of this small booth, and the wet sound will still go into the room and return into your microphone. So if you are a violin player and you have these F-shaped openings at the top, your microphone will be pointing downwards. So you need to put something on the floor and preferably around you. Also a little house at like 4 walls, a floor and no roof. You let the sound escape into the room. That's important. And then it will be dry, your recording, and the recording will be uncompressed. And that's what you want, because you are going to compress it yourself and you are going to make it wet yourself later on in your digital audio workstation. In my case, that's a Logic Pro. And then it sounds like this.
I am what I am. You are what you are.
All right, that's it.